Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about border controls and immigration enforcement and how different it is across the world, and comparing the Western world really to all the rest of them, I suppose. But we've all seen how millions of illegals are just waved into the United States through the southern border. We also see hundreds of thousands being waved in across the English Channel into Britain. Similarly, hundreds of thousands coming into Europe from Africa and also from the Middle East through Turkey and into Greece and so on. And now, of course, the big movement of folks from Ukraine, more than half of which, by the way, aren't Ukrainian. And others that are there who are just chancers wanting to go to the welfare states of the rich West. So the Western world, the globalists want mass migration. Their idea is to move as many black and brown peasants from the third world into the much wealthier first world. So you've got all these people, all these peasants all around the world, billions of them, sitting doing nothing, living as subsistence peasants. They don't even exist in the world economy. They don't even register. They're not even a statistic in the world. But if you move them to the West, even if they're sweeping floors or whatever, if you move them to the West, then they become part of the world economy. And that's really what the globalists want. And they're turning us all ultimately into serfs. And it'll be like the medieval times when the aristocrats owned the land, and you had a little plot of land, and you worked on that to feed yourself, but the rest of the time you worked free of charge for the aristocrat, who in turn would give you some little shitbox place to live in, and maybe half a day a week you'd have access to the horse or the mill to grind your bread and that, make your bread, that sort of stuff. I think we're going back to that, and I think it'll within the next 50 years, I think that'll be how the West will look. There'll be a very rich elite, as there were back in the day, and it'll be, say, one in every 600 or 700 people will be the elite, and the rest of us, or their enablers, and the rest of the population will just be just serfs, just labouring at whatever job on some basic income thing, labouring at whatever job and you'll just exist. You won't live, you'll just exist, and you'll be there as tax cattle for the elite. And white people probably won't take too kindly to that, which is why I think they want to stuff as many black and brown low IQ peasants into the Western world and try and sort of breed out the white people, other than a very, very small coterie of the elites. But coming back to the issue of the third world countries, have got they quite stringently control their borders, or certainly at the point of immigration at least. Now, as a non-US citizen, and I've travelled to the US many, many times on business, there are two things you had to have. You had to prove that firstly you had to have a ticket, a plane ticket out of the US, so you could arrive, but you had to have a plane ticket out of the US, which had to be within, I think, 90 days or 60 days, whatever it was, that you agreed to leave, and you kind of signed a form saying you agreed to that. And if you were there on business, you had to prove you're in business. They would go through your stuff, and where's your business card, and who are you going to see, and these sorts of things. The question was fairly, I wouldn't say rigorous necessarily, but it was there. They were. Now, if you couldn't sort of prove those things, they'd turn you around and say, "No, you're not coming in, buddy. You're out of here." So there was a need to always have that in place. And I've known people who certainly in the day before, you could just go on your mobile phone and order another plane ticket. In the days before that, people arrived with not a return ticket or a ticket out of the US. They no, you're not coming in. You're going straight back in the plane to Sydney, Australia, and tough luck for you, buddy. So that was how it sort of used to be. Now I don't know what it is sort of during the COVID period and so on, but it would be very hard, I would think, to get through a stringent, like if you're a third world peasant, it would be very hard to get through get through something like that. But maybe it's possible. Now, this was also the case in even going to third world countries. They still wanted to see it when you were leaving and the ticket that you had. And some of these places they give and it's very structured to sort of elicit bribes from you, but they'd have a standard 7-day visa, and they'd ask, you want to stay for longer, and then that was the sign that you had to slip them $20 and they'd give you like a 30-day visa or something. But most of these third world countries, I went and did only what I needed to do and got out as quickly as I could. I never particularly liked staying there. If I had to, I would, but it was rare. It was rare that I was there for longer than a couple of weeks. But anyway, they have a thing in a lot of countries, but certainly in the third world countries, where you must have a minimum of 6 months life left on your passport, and this is generally because they've got very vague laws of arrest and detention, so they can have you in prison for 180 days without a trial or without a charge for that matter, just arbitrarily arrest you and bang you up. So they like to have, because once your passport expires, you effectively become a non-citizen, and they have to then illegally oblige the international law to, as I understand, at least return you to the place you came from, which means they effectively evict you at that point. And I remember going to, this has happened a few times. I'd arrive at a place where, and it was the day before the beginning of like the 6 months period began, the final 6 months of the passport. So I'd arrived the day before, or 2 days before, but I was leaving on the day that the 6 months kicked in. That last 6 months of the life of the passport kicked in, and they just plain wouldn't let me in. No, you're not coming in, buddy. And this was, of course, again the third world countries. They'd shake you down for a bribe. And then you'd get like a 3-day visa or something like that. But even though I was leaving, and had a ticket that I was leaving on the day that started, no, you're not coming in. So they were quite stringent, and this is something, for some reason the West seems to have no controls about people coming in. People just randomly appear from these third world countries, obviously penniless peasants, no means of support, and yet somehow they just get waved through. And certainly my experience was that was never possible. Maybe it'd be possible to sort of bullshit your way through, I don't know, but given that the type of questioning, and I didn't have a problem with it, by the way, I didn't want to stay anyway, but I thought it was quite stringent, but I was a white guy, so maybe they've got a different standard for black and brown third world peasants. Well, they must do. Now, a lot of the people in not only Australia but the US, Britain, elsewhere, are people who overstay their visas. So they arrive maybe as tourists or as family members of some family, and they're coming to visit. And then they just decide to stay, and they don't want to go back to their shithole third world countries. So they stay on. Now, for some reason, the authorities seem incredibly unable, just absolutely unable, to track down and deport black and brown people. They just don't seem to be able to do it. White people, they seem to have a stunning rate of success, absolutely stunning. The resources they put into one and the resources they put in the other are absolutely remarkable. And if they do sort of manage to apprehend, or somehow it lands into their lap, the black or brown overstayer, then all that person is to do is say, refugee, or if I go back, I'm going to be victimized or something. Bang, that's it. And this entire apparatus, this entire very well-funded NGO legal aid apparatus suddenly rushes in to help, something that the white guy would never get. Now, just to give you an idea, I was there was I think he was from Ireland, a guy who I was going to hire, or the business that I've got a share in, was going to hire him to do some work, and I can't remember what he was now. I think he was like a civil engineer, just going from memory here, and he was going to do something specific, maybe for, I don't know, a week or whatever it was. And he had his visa, or claimed he had his visa. What he didn't tell us, he'd overstayed the visa. And so the paperwork he showed us was he waved under our nose. We looked at it quickly, and it seemed to be an order, but maybe it wasn't. We should have maybe taken a photocopy of it or something. But anyway, he didn't turn up for work on the day, the appointed day. So I called him, and he said, well, I'm not coming in. Well, he said, they won't let me. I said, who won't let you? And I'm having the conversation. He's actually been apprehended by two immigration officials, and he's being driven to the airport to be put on a plane, and claimed he was in handcuffs. I don't know if he was, but so it's interesting they let him take the call. So he said he wouldn't. Oh, okay then. Now he was an example of a guy. He's the sort of guy you probably would want to stay. He speaks English. He fits in. He's a civil engineer. He's got qualifications. That sort of guy you probably would. But instead, they're the ones that vast resources are put into grabbing that guy, putting him on the plane, and sending him back. And sure, he's overstayed his visa. I get that. Yeah, there's a legal issue here. Your visa is for however long his visa was for, and he's overstayed. So I get that. I understand that. But why do they not apply that with equal rigor to all the black and brown people? And of course they don't. So this is something that's deeply concerning, but it's the way the globalists want it. There's not sort of white people moving around. Who cares? I mean, really. But the idea is that the globalist plan is to move as many black and brown people into the wealthy West as they can, and that'll destroy our societies, destroy the nations. It'll turn the whole thing into a shithole with just a very rich elite at the top, which is how it is, by the way, in the third world countries. Places like Mexico and Indonesia and that sort of thing, they're dirt poor places, but they've got 50 people in each country who are obscenely wealthy. So there's a huge elite there who've, or a very small elite rather, who are hugely wealthy, and that's the way we're heading here as the middle class gets squeezed further and further. So that's my take on it. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.